You want to be a kind and helpful person, but there's a difference between being helpful and being used. Not everyone deserves your time, your energy, or your resources. Some people will take everything you give and still come back for more, leaving you drained and resentful. You can spot them if you pay attention. Those who never say thank you, those who never take responsibility, those who make you feel guilty for setting boundaries. They're the ones who only remember you exist when they need something, and they're the ones who play the victim every single time life gets hard without ever trying to change. These are the people you should not help, even if they ask, because helping them isn't kindness. It's self-sabotage. Do not help people who never take responsibility for their actions, because if they won't own their mistakes, your help only enables their excuses. Think about it like this. When someone constantly shifts blame, when every failure is always someone else's fault, when every setback comes with a story of why they aren't to blame, you're not dealing with a person who wants to grow. You're dealing with someone who wants a safety net to keep making the same mistakes over and over. And when you step in to rescue them, what you're really doing is signing up to carry the weight they refuse to carry themselves. That's not help, that's enabling. It feels like kindness in the moment, but it's cruelty in the long run because you're keeping them exactly where they are. We've all known someone who always has a reason, always has an excuse, always has someone else to point to when things don't go their way. They didn't study because the teacher was unfair. They didn't get the job because the boss didn't like them. They lost a relationship because the other person was impossible. But what's the common denominator in all those situations? It's them, and if they can't see that, your help won't make them see it. Instead, your help becomes their crutch. It reinforces their belief that the world is against them and that they're powerless without someone bailing them out. The hard truth is that responsibility is the starting point of real change. Until someone says, "This is on me and I need to do something different," nothing will shift. And if you keep stepping in, you're robbing them of that moment. You're making it easier for them to dodge responsibility yet again. They don't have to look in the mirror if they can keep looking to you. They don't have to grow if you'll always soften the fall. That's why you've got to draw a line, because every time you pick up the slack for someone who refuses to own their part, you're teaching them that it's okay not to. Now, this doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you write people off at the first sign of struggle. It means you recognize the difference between someone who's struggling and someone who's refusing. Struggling people still try. They mess up, they admit it, they want to do better. Refusing people avoid accountability altogether. They act like life is happening to them and they're just an innocent bystander. That's the person you cannot afford to keep helping, because your help isn't lifting them up, it's locking them in place. And here's where it gets tricky. These people can be really convincing. They can make you feel sorry for them. They can tug at your empathy, play the victim card, tell you stories that make you want to step in. But you've got to stop and ask, do they ever own their role in the problem? Do they ever take steps to fix it on their own? Do they ever change their behavior after the help you've already given? If the answer is no, then your kindness is being wasted. Worse, it's being misused. It's hard to watch someone you care about struggle, but sometimes the best way to help them is by stepping back. Because when there's no one left to blame, when there's no one left to catch them, they might finally have to face themselves. And that's when real growth begins. Until then, they'll keep chasing a rescuer instead of chasing responsibility. And the more you show up, the more they'll keep running from what they need most: accountability. Do not help people who constantly drain your energy because they don't want solutions. They only want your attention. There's a big difference between someone who comes to you with a problem looking for guidance and someone who comes to you with a problem looking for a dumping ground. The first person values your perspective. They listen, they try to take what you say and use it. The second person isn't interested in fixing anything. They're just interested in unloading on you over and over. And if you let them, they'll keep circling the same issues again and again, never making changes, never taking steps, because the goal was never growth. The goal was always access to your energy. Think about how draining that feels. You walk away from a conversation more exhausted than before it started. You notice that every time you pick up the phone or sit with them, you're pouring out and they're taking in, but nothing ever shifts. It's not a cycle of building, it's a cycle of depletion. And if you're honest with yourself, you know they don't actually want to hear the advice you give. They nod, they agree, they may even thank you in the moment. But the next time you see them, the story hasn't changed. The same complaint, the same frustration, the same cycle, and the same demand for your attention. That's not connection, that's consumption. People like this often disguise themselves as victims of circumstances. And while everyone has moments of hardship, the pattern here is that nothing changes no matter how much support is offered. You could spend hours talking, you could help brainstorm solutions, you could offer every tool you know, and still they'll return with the same drained perspective because solving their problem isn't the point. The point is keeping your eyes, your ears, and your energy locked on them. And if you're not careful, you become their battery pack. They run on you while you're left feeling empty. This is why boundaries are so crucial. Helping someone who doesn't want to be helped isn't noble, it's self-destructive. It creates resentment, it creates exhaustion, and it creates an unhealthy dynamic where one person constantly takes and the other constantly gives. And over time, you start to notice you're not showing up for yourself as much because so much of you is being drained by them. That's when it becomes clear that you're not helping, you're being used. Not always intentionally, but consistently. And what makes it tricky is that these people can be people you care about deeply. Friends, family, coworkers, even a partner. That's why the pull to keep helping feels strong, because you don't want to abandon them. But you have to step back and realize that helping isn't the same thing as listening endlessly. Helping isn't the same thing as letting someone drain your time and energy without taking action on their own. True help involves partnership, effort, responsibility, and some kind of movement forward. If that's not there, then what's happening is not help, it's dependency. When you notice someone only wants your presence to feed their cycle of complaining, you've got to protect your energy, because every ounce you pour into someone who refuses to grow is an ounce you could have poured into yourself or someone who's actually ready for change. And the reality is, people who drain you rarely stop on their own. They stop when you stop giving them the outlet. They stop when you set the boundary and say, I can't keep doing this. It's not that you don't care, it's that you refuse to let your care be consumed without purpose. That's not selfishness, that's wisdom, because the more you give away to the wrong people, the less you have left for the right ones. Do not help people who use manipulation or guilt to get what they want, because real need doesn't come wrapped in pressure or shame. Manipulation is a tactic, not a request. It's not someone reaching out with honesty. It's someone twisting words, twisting emotions, and twisting circumstances to make you feel like you don't have a choice but to help them. They don't come to you with respect. They come to you with strings attached. And those strings are designed to pull at your emotions until you feel trapped into giving them what they want. That isn't asking, that's controlling. And when you give into it, you're not helping them. You're rewarding their manipulation. Think about the people who never simply ask for your help, but instead frame it in a way that makes you feel guilty if you say no. They might remind you of all the times they were there for you, even if those times were small or exaggerated. They might say things like, if you really cared, you'd do this for me. Or they paint themselves as the victim so heavily that the only way to lift the weight of their story off your chest is to say yes. That's not a fair exchange. That's emotional blackmail. And once you fall into that pattern, it doesn't stop. Each time you give in, you reinforce that guilt works. Each time you say yes under pressure, you tell them that manipulation is effective. What makes it dangerous is that people who manipulate know how to study you. They know your empathy, your kindness, your desire to help, and they weaponize it. They don't care that it drains you. They care that it serves them. And if you're not careful, you'll start feeling obligated every time they reach out. Not because you want to help, but because you don't want to feel guilty for saying no. That's how manipulation works. It traps you in the fear of being seen as uncaring or selfish if you put up boundaries. But here's the truth. Saying no to manipulation is not selfish. It's self-respect. When someone truly needs help, they come to you with humility, not guilt. They accept your no if that's your answer. They don't try to force your hand. they don't pressure you, and they don't hold your love or loyalty hostage. You can always tell the difference because real need respects choice, but manipulation takes it away. Real need says, I'd be grateful for your help. Manipulation says, if you don't help me, you're a bad friend, a bad partner, a bad person. One comes from honesty, the other comes from control. The danger of helping manipulative people is that they never actually learn to stand on their own. They learn how to perfect their tactics. They get sharper at pulling the guilt strings, more skilled at playing the victim, more convincing at twisting reality to their advantage. And the more you play along, the more power you give them over your emotions. That cycle doesn't just drain you, it erodes your trust in people. You start to feel suspicious of anyone asking for help because you've been burned by those who weaponized your compassion. And the hardest part is that manipulators often disguise themselves as the ones who need you most. They play the role so well that you almost believe helping them is the right thing. But the truth is, helping them isn't helping at all. It's fueling their behavior. The only way to break that cycle is to step back, hold your boundaries, and refuse to let guilt make your decisions. Because if someone truly cares for you, they won't use guilt as currency. They won't treat your kindness as something they can demand. They'll respect your yes, and they'll respect your no. And the moment you recognize the difference, you stop being a target for manipulation and start reclaiming your energy. Do not help people who repeatedly ignore your advice or efforts, because when someone doesn't value your help, giving more only devalues you. There is a certain frustration that comes when you spend your time, your energy, and your words trying to guide someone, and they nod, they thank you, and then go right back to doing the exact same thing that put them in that position in the first place. It is not that they didn't hear you, it is that they didn't want to listen. They wanted your presence. They wanted to feel like they had someone in their corner, but they never intended to take what you offered seriously. And the more you keep showing up, the more you teach them that your effort costs you something, but costs them nothing. When someone ignores your advice once, that can be a mistake. Maybe they were not ready. Maybe they were still learning. But when it becomes a pattern, when they keep circling back to you with the same problems, the same choices, the same habits, what you are seeing is not lack of understanding, but lack of respect. Respect for your time, respect for your wisdom, respect for the fact that you cared enough to try. And without that respect, your help turns into background noise. You might as well be speaking into the wind because nothing changes. Think about how much energy it takes to walk someone through a solution, to explain, to encourage, to check in, only for them to brush it off and go back to their old ways. At some point, you start to realize it is not about helping them anymore. It is about them using you as a safety blanket. They want the comfort of your presence, but they do not want the responsibility of action. They want the attention that comes with asking, but not the accountability that comes with applying. And if you allow that cycle to continue, you are not helping them grow. You are keeping them stuck. Worse, you are draining yourself in the process. There is also a subtle message being sent when someone ignores your efforts. The message is, I don't take what you say seriously. And when you keep offering more advice, more energy, more support, despite that message, what you are telling them in return is, it's okay to waste my time. It's okay to disregard my effort. Over time, that not only weakens your boundaries, it weakens your sense of value. You start to feel like maybe you are the problem. Maybe you are not explaining well enough. Maybe you are not giving the right advice, but it is not about you. It is about them choosing not to listen. And here's the truth. People who ignore your advice are not looking for growth. They are looking for validation. They want to vent. They want to complain. They want to feel heard, but they don't want to do the uncomfortable work of change. Because change means accountability, and accountability means effort, and effort means stepping out of the comfort zone of excuses. That is why you cannot keep pouring yourself out to someone who keeps pouring it right back into the ground. Real help only matters when it's received. Advice only has power when it's applied. Support only makes a difference when it's respected. If someone can't meet you halfway, then all you're doing is talking to a wall. And every time you throw yourself against that wall, you lose a little more of your own strength, your own patience, your own energy. At some point, you have to recognize that your effort deserves better than being ignored. You have to understand that your voice matters too much to be dismissed. And the only way to make that clear is to stop helping those who refuse to listen. Because if they don't value your words, they won't value your actions either. Do not help people who take but never give, because healthy relationships are built on exchange, not exploitation. There's a natural rhythm in every healthy connection, a give and a take that flows both ways. Sometimes you're the one lifting someone else up, and sometimes they're the one lifting you. Sometimes you're pouring in, sometimes they are. That balance doesn't have to be perfectly equal every moment, but over time, it has to even out. Without that exchange, what you have is not a relationship. It's a transaction where one person is always the supplier and the other is always the consumer. And when someone only knows how to take, what they're really saying is that your role is to serve them, not to share with them. You notice it in small ways at first. They're always the one asking, but never offering. They're quick to call when they need something, but slow to show up when you need support. They expect your time, your energy, your kindness, but the moment the roles are reversed, there's silence. They're unavailable, they're busy, they're nowhere to be found. And if you're not careful, you'll excuse it. You'll say to yourself, maybe they're just going through something. Maybe they'll be there next time. But after a while, a pattern emerges, and the pattern is simple. They take because you let them, and they don't give because they don't want to. Helping people like this doesn't just drain you, it conditions them. It trains them to see you as a resource instead of a person. They stop valuing your presence and start valuing what you provide. And that's when it becomes dangerous, because they don't see your kindness as a gift, they see it as an expectation. The more you give, the more they feel entitled to receive. And entitlement has no gratitude attached to it. Instead of thank you, you start to hear finally. Instead of appreciation, you start to feel obligation. They don't celebrate what you give, they demand it. And over time, that imbalance chips away at your confidence, your worth, your sense of fairness in the relationship. The truth is, people who only take rarely stop on their own. They don't suddenly wake up one day and decide to become givers. They keep taking until the giving stops. They keep pulling until there's nothing left to pull from. And the longer you allow it, the more deeply rooted the dynamic becomes. It's not about them needing you anymore, it's about them expecting you. And that expectation leaves you feeling drained, used, and unseen. Because while you're emptying yourself to meet their needs, yours are being ignored. Relationships built on one-way giving aren't relationships, they're imbalances. They leave one person carrying the load while the other coasts. They create resentment even if you don't say it out loud. You start to notice yourself dreading their calls, feeling tired before you even respond, bracing yourself for the next request. That's not love, that's not friendship, that's not partnership, that's weight. And weight like that doesn't just sit quietly, it crushes over time. It makes you less available for the people who do give back. It makes you question your own boundaries, and it makes you feel guilty for even considering saying no. But saying no to people who only take is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's recognizing that your generosity is too valuable to be poured into a bottomless cup. It's understanding that people who can't or won't give back are not partners, they're consumers. And the longer you keep feeding that cycle, the more you teach them that it's acceptable to use you. The reality is, the best help you can give someone who only takes is none at all, because without your constant supply, they're forced to face what they've avoided, the need to give as well as receive. And if they never learn that lesson, then what they're really looking for isn't help, it's a host, and you are worth far more than being treated like a resource to be drained.